When it comes to choosing a mate, Solomon's example can be instructive to us. What qualities do we value in a marriage mate? Spiritual qualities? Or is it mainly the physical, and we hope that the spiritual will catch up later? A young sister is getting acquainted with a young brother. He's really good looking, has a great personality, gets along with everybody. But how's he doing spiritually? Does he have a good schedule for theocratic activities, and does he stick to it? For example, if you mention an article in a recent magazine, does he often say, "I must have missed that one"? If that's what happens, it's a bad sign. Does he make spiritual activities a priority in his life? If he doesn't do that while he's single, what makes you think that he's going to do it after you get married? Will you change him, or will he change you? As our comment reminds us, Solomon enjoyed many privileges, but he apparently felt that some of God's laws just didn't apply to him. Why not? Well, we don't know. Could it be what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes? The king does whatever he wants? Maybe so. Solomon multiplied horses and acquired many wives for himself. So what's the lesson for us? No matter how long we've been in the truth, no matter how many privileges we have, no matter how much Jehovah has used us, we can't afford to let down our guard. We must guard our heart, and we mustn't ignore any red flags that might indicate that all is not well.
Thus concludes David Splane's cameo appearance in the November 2022 JW Broadcasting episode, Hypocrisy is a Problem. Who'd have thunk it? There's a problem, apparently, with certain Jehovah's Witnesses, especially Jehovah's Witnesses in positions of authority, preaching about righteousness and purporting to play by the rules while simultaneously letting things slip and thinking that certain rules don't apply to them. Am I the only one who, while David Splane was talking, was thinking, Bottlegate? He almost perfectly described Anthony Morris, who, let's be completely honest, clearly has an issue when it comes to alcohol. If he doesn't have an issue when it comes to alcohol, there'd better be a damn good reason why he slurs so much in his talks. And with Bottlegate, thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious, we had actual footage of him in a liquor store buying many, many bottles of very expensive Macallan's Scotch whiskey. So David Splane is trying to point to hypocrisy, and in doing so is making a hypocrite of himself, or at least of the governing body, because that's exactly what the governing body does. They say one thing and they do another. It's the same thing with Stephen Lett when it comes to materialism. He preaches about how terrible materialism is while being a property investor, despite having taken a vow of poverty. Thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious. So I was fuming, quite frankly, towards the end there, and that's before we even talk about David Splane lecturing millions of Jehovah's Witnesses on who they should or shouldn't marry. That's what I've just seen. He's laying down rules that are nowhere in the Bible. He's, again, just reading from the Book of Opinions. These are his ideas. These are his pet peeves. They don't have scriptural basis, or if they do, he hasn't quoted a single scripture when he's listing these off. But as I did previously in his talk, I'm just going to paraphrase them for you. So let's be clear. You're watching this as a young Jehovah's Witness. Let's say you're in your 20s and you're single and you'd really like to get married. Let's say you're a single Jehovah's Witness young woman. And here David Splane is saying that you're not allowed to marry someone who doesn't have or stick to a good schedule for theocratic activities. So maybe you're really attracted to someone who, as David Splane says, has a really nice personality. It's a really sweet, kind person that you're attracted to. But they don't have or stick to a good schedule for theocratic activities. Like with Britain's Got Talent or America's Got Talent, you just press the button, don't you? It's a big X mark, isn't it? They've failed. It's a red flag. They can no longer be considered for a relationship because, according to David Splane, this guy's a loser. He's not keeping up with a schedule. Point number 2, you're not allowed to consider for dating or marriage someone who can't remember specific Watchtower articles in casual conversation. That's what he described earlier. I mean, that's a tough one. Surely that would apply to practically every Jehovah's Witness male. I mean, even elders. You know, if you approached me when I was an elder for a year, it was a year that I spent as an elder. If you'd approached me and said, what did you think about the main gist of the February 15th, 2007 Watchtower, particularly those paragraphs towards the end? What did you think of that, Lloyd? I would have been like, there's no way you remember Watchtower articles like that. He's setting a bar that I'm sure even he can't reach, because he's shown in this talk that even his grasp of Bible knowledge is a bit dodgy. He gave that remark earlier about Solomon and about how it would have positively affected the history of Israel if Solomon hadn't had a pagan wife through which he had a son, Rehoboam. He said that that would have been a positive thing, even though in Matthew it lists Rehoboam as an ancestor of Joseph and part of the proof of the Messiah. So this is a man who doesn't even know his Bible that well, and he's setting as a mark, as a potential red flag, not being able to identify Watchtower articles in casual conversation. I think even he would fail there as a governing body member, especially given his poor knowledge of the Bible. So I don't know what to say. It's just getting harder and harder, isn't it, to be a Jehovah's Witness? It's hard enough following the rules that at least have some kind of scriptural backing. But when you layer on these extra rules so that now you shouldn't consider for marriage someone who fails to remember specific Watchtower articles, it's just getting impossible, isn't it? And the third one, fails to prioritize spiritual activities. So if there's a spiritual activity that you could be doing and something that isn't spiritual, let's say a game of football, let's say your favorite team is playing and you could be preparing for the Watchtower. If you prioritize the game of football, which is only going to happen that one time, it's literally not going to happen again. That's the time when the football happens. The Watchtower preparation can be done at any point during the week up to when the Watchtower study is. But do you understand what I'm saying? You need to prioritize the spiritual activity. Could be studying the Watchtower, could be doing some other kind of meeting preparation or Bible study or family worship. You need to be able to prioritize spiritual activities over non-spiritual activities. And if you don't, it's a red flag. It's that red X. Am I the only one, viewers, or is this taking things up a notch? It feels as though David Splane's ridiculous rant, this unhinged list of rules that he's giving, it feels like he's making the lives of Jehovah's Witnesses even harder, even more impossible than they already were. And that's saying something. Because being a Jehovah's Witness is no walk in the park. And especially when we come to rules on marriage and relationships and sex, especially when it starts becoming sexual repression and people who would be in healthy relationships end up being talked out of them on such trivial grounds, on such a trivial basis as, yes, but he didn't know that Watchtower article. What does it say about this organization and how hopelessly authoritarian it has become?